All right, we're going to be continuing our surface modeling exercises. This is the second one. We're going to create a drone arm first by designing some surfaces and then turning those into a solid piece when we're done. So to get started, we're going to start a sketch on the front plane. So you can either select that first and then click Start a Sketch, or you can select to start a sketch and then choose the front plane. And then we're going to view normal to the sketch plane by right-clicking and then selecting View Normal to Sketch Plane. And then press the P key to hide all of the other planes. Now we're ready to sketch. So our instructions are saying to sketch a 2-point spline on the front plane. Be sure the right endpoint is vertical to the origin. So we want to anchor one side of our line to vertical of this point of origin. So I'm going to start a spline. Make sure that I reference that point and drag up. I get that yellow dotted line, which means it will be vertically aligned with that. So I'm going to click there, and then it's going to be slightly above, I think, what would be horizontal to that. So it's not horizontally aligned, slightly above that. So I'm going to go ahead and click over here. I'm done with my spline. It's just a 2-point spline. So I'm going to click Escape. Eventually this needs to be curved. So I'm going to force some things to happen by creating some construction lines. On each end, I'm going to start a construction line. So I have construction enabled, and then I'm going to start a line at each endpoint. The length doesn't really matter. Go ahead and do that again from the other point out. And now I'm going to make this spline tangent to each of these lines. So it's going to make it curve seamlessly from the line into the curve and then back out of the curve. So I'm going to use my constraints here, choose tangent, click on one of the horizontal lines and then click on the spline, and immediately you see it adjusts to be tangent to that line. I'm going to repeat that process for the other line. So now they're both tangent. The other thing we're going to do is make sure that these two handles are the same length, same distance from the end point. So I'm going to escape to get out of my constraint tool. And if I grab and drag one of these, you can see only one side adjusts. So I want these two to be equal. So I'm going to use the equal constraint and then click on each of the handles. So now if I escape out of the tool and grab one handle, both of them adjust the same. All right, so we've done that. We need to ensure that the spline is tangent to each construction line, which we've already done. So you can see once I reference a line, you can see all the constraints appearing. So if you want to see all of the constraints, you can click on the Show Constraints and enable that. And if you don't see all of the constraints that you're expecting to see, it may be that you're zoomed out too far. So they start to overlap. So if you zoom in, you can see all the current constraints. Now we're going to add some dimensions. So we want the length of the handle. So each of these is going to be 45. And we're modeling in millimeters. Then we want the distance from this point to this point. So I'm going to reference both of those points. And I need to drag it out this way in order to reference the height difference. That's going to be 15. Then I have a height measurement from the point of origin to that end point. is supposed to be 25. And then the total length from end to end of our spline is going to be 125. All right, so all dimensions and points have been defined. So the sketch is completely defined, which means everything has turned black. So they're all codependent. If you changed one thing, it might interfere, and it interferes with one of these, it will not work. So it's kind of locked into position. You can still adjust things like the length, things that are independent of one another. So for now, we're done. Click that check mark. The next thing we're going to do is start a very similar sketch, but on a different plane. So go ahead and click on the sketch button. This time we're going to start on the top plane. So I selected the top plane. And then I want to view normal to that plane because I'm still viewing from the front. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and view normal to sketch plane. All right, now from here, we're going to create a very similar spline, but we need to reference this point in our other drawing. So before I start drawing, I'm going to go ahead and use the Use tool and click on that point, and it makes it available in my sketch as I'm drawing. I can reference that point. Now we're going to create another spline. So go ahead and select the Spline tool. And we want to be sure the right endpoint is vertical to the origin. So again, want to reference the origin. And it's going to be this time below that point. So I'm going to reference that yellow dotted line, drag it down slightly, and then click to start my spline. And then I want to reference the end point that I made available from the other drawing. And that's going to be below that slightly, not as low as the other one. So I'm going to click here to end that. And now I'm going to press escape. I'm done drawing my spline. And right now it just shows as a straight line because the handles are straight. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag those handles up. So I'm pressing escape to get out of the tool. I want to be able to see the handle and select it. So I'm just dragging it away from the spline for now. And I want these both to be horizontally aligned so the handle is horizontal. So I'm going to add a constraint horizontal to each of these lines, or the handles. So they should be, go ahead and show constraints to make sure we have a horizontal constraint on both of these. All right, just want to make sure there's no other Okay, so now we're going to add a dimension. These two handles again should be equal. So we're going to add that constraint really quickly. And then we're going to dimension, start with the handle. It's supposed to be 45. And then the distance between the point of origin and this end point here should be 21.5. And then from the other end point, this measurement should be 15. All right, now everything is well defined here, and we're ready to accept this as our second sketch. So click that check mark. All right, in this next step, I'm going to go ahead and orbit so we can see both of our lines here. All right, so what I'm going to do is loft the two together. Let's see if I can view slightly from the top. Let's get this view here. So we're going to loft to create a surface between the two lines. So each line will define the ending edge of a surface. So find the loft tool, and we're going to select the profiles of each edge. So click on edge of sketch 1, edge of sketch 2. Automatically you see it's bridged the two, created a surface between them. But it's just a straight, flat surface. I want this to be curved. So we're going to create a condition for the starting point of each end of our surface. I want to do normal to profile. So it's going to bend out slightly, trying to match the end with the profile of that line. So I want to do that to both the start and the end. And I'm going to change both of the values here to 2 instead of 1. Once you apply that setting, you'll see it drastically affects the curve. Then click the check mark to accept that. So this is really 1/4 of what would be a completed part. So we're going to mirror this on the other side, which will complete half of our part surface. So we're going to find the mirror tool, which is up here. And then it says in the dialog box here, entities to mirror. So I'm going to select the surface that I've created, and I want to add it. And we're going to select the mirror plane. And we're going to use the top plane. So if I reveal the top plane, you can see that is a plane. If I mirror on the other side, that will give us what we want. So we're going to choose the top plane as our mirror plane. All right, so since those two are touching, it's going to merge our original surface with the new surface, and it's going to create just the one surface. It will still reference both halves if I scroll over it, but it's really only one surface. If I hide it, the whole thing disappears. All right, now we're going to move on to the other part of the arm. So I'm going to hide the surfaces. We're going to start a new sketch. So click on the sketch button. And we're going to choose the front plane as our sketch plane. Right click and view normal to sketch plane. So this is the plane that we're sketching on. All right, so now we're going to sketch a vertical construction line to the left of spline in sketch 1. So we need to show sketch 1 in order to know where to put this. So I'm going to click on the eyeball next to sketch 1 to make that visible. And then I'm going to be sketching a construction line to the left of the spline, so somewhere over here. So I'm going to choose the construction option, and then the line tool. And again, I'm not sure exactly the position of it or the length yet, but I'm going to create a line that crosses about right there. Press escape. And then we have a profile that we're going to be sketching using a few different tools. So we're going to start off with a small horizontally constrained line. to that, we're going to add a 2-point spline. So I'm going to click here for the spline tool, attach it to the end of my horizontal line, and then I'm going to move up here to place my second point about right here. Now I'm done, so I'm going to press escape. Then I'm going to use a conic arc. So if yours is set to 3-point arc, go ahead and click that arrow. We're going to choose conic from the menu. And then I'm going to click at the end of my spline to start it. You can see this is an interesting tool here. And then I'm not going to attach it to the end point of my construction line, but I'm going to reference it vertically before I click. So it's not going to be attached, it's a little distance away. So then click to place that. Then the RHO dimension is supposed to be 0.5. So we're just leaving it like that. But then I'm going to drag it to where it's also horizontally aligned. I may have said vertically over. It is horizontally aligned with that point. All right, we're going to leave that as 0.5. Press enter to accept it. And now we need to add a bunch of constraints to make sure that this is going to turn out the way we want it to. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to add a tangent constraint between, let's go ahead and escape out of this tool here. Let's go ahead and add, this is supposed to be horizontally aligned. Let's go ahead and do that. And then we're going to add a tangent constraint between this line and our spline. And now I'm going to go ahead and grab the other handle. So I need to get out of the constraints. Drag this over here. And then this is supposed to be also, let me go ahead and, I'm going to shorten this because I'm looking at what I'm supposed to be creating here and it's not quite right. So I'm going to drag that in so that this can be vertically constrained. And then also this line should be tangent to that, the conic. So we're going to do tangent reference between this and this. Just checking to make sure I have all of the constraints correct. Again, if you want to view, I'll go ahead and show my constraints and see if you have the same. So these 2 points are horizontally constrained, and also this point is horizontally constrained with that endpoint. We have a vertical constraint on this handle, and then a horizontal constraint on this handle, and then a tangent relationship between the spline and this line, our horizontal line, and also the conic curve there. All right. Next, we're going to add all of our dimensions, which this will lock it into place. I'm going to start with the base here, and this is going to be referenced as a radius, not a distance. So this is going to have a radius of 15 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the dimension tool. And if you want to make a radius, you click on the point, then you reference the line that would be the center. So that creates a radius instead of a distance between this point and the center point. So it's projecting a circle. That's supposed to be 15 degrees, so 15 or 15 millimeters. Now the distance between this point and this point should be 20 millimeters. Go ahead and reference those 2 points. And then we'll continue up. So this is supposed to be the distance between the end point and the handle. It's supposed to be 30 millimeters. And that really squished things up here at the top. Let me undo that step. So as you're doing, if you ever run into that problem where it really distorts your drawing too much, then you might need to start with a different dimension. So I have this dimension placed, but I'm not going to change it now. So let's go ahead and stretch out the length here. So I need more length to work with. So another measurement would be, it's 10 millimeters between, let's go ahead and start at the top here. All right, let's do this. There's 10 millimeters between the top of this point and this point. Let's go ahead and reference that. Type in 10. And then there's 10 millimeters between this point and the end of our spline over here. And then there's a 10 millimeter distance between this point and our construction line. All right, now the dimension between the top and our construction line is also a radius value. So I'm going to click on the end point and then reference the line. That will give me a radius that's supposed to be set to 15. All right, now I can set this value here that I was struggling to be able to earlier. So I'm going to double click on that measurement now and type in 30. I have one more measurement. Okay, so the distance between this point, so the very end point, I can actually reference this point, and this point here, this is supposed to be 155. There we go. That's a lot of dimensioning. So pause here. If you need to reference all of these values, I'm just going to rearrange them so they look a little bit better. I'll turn off my constraints so that's not distracting there. All right, the next step we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and check the check mark to accept the sketch as is. And we're going to revolve this profile around this center. So find that revolve tool, which is right here. We're going to select sketch 3 as our profile. And then we need to select the axis. So click on that red box and then choose the construction line as our revolution axis. And that completely revolved 360 degrees around because full is selected. We want to change that to one direction. And the degrees we want to do half, so 180. All right, so if yours did not revolve this same way, you can simply click the arrow, find the revolve arrow, and click the end of it, and we'll reverse the revolve. So we want the revolve to be this direction. So once you're looking at the front, you should be seeing the outside of this surface. All right, go ahead and click the check mark to accept the feature. Now we're going to split. So we're going to reveal our surfaces. We have two of them. Go ahead and turn the other one on so you can see it. So you can see, if we orbit in, we can see that there's extra surface on each of our parts here that need to be trimmed away. Eventually we want this all to be one fluid surface. So we're going to use each surface to trim the other one. So that process is called splitting. So find the split tool, and the first thing you want to select is a part or surface to split. So we're going to click to select the, let's go ahead and do the arm first here, this part. And then the tool that you're going to select to split with is the other part. So I'm going to switch over to the entity to split with. We're going to use this part to split the other part. You can see there's kind of a split line right there, and it has created another surface. So there's two surfaces, one here and one on the end, and our other surface, the one that we used, has turned kind of ghosty. We want to keep that, so we want to select Keep Tools. Otherwise it would disappear. So now we have three surfaces, the one that we used to split, and then the two surfaces that have been created when we actually did the split. So we're going to go ahead and click the check mark. Now we've successfully split the one part that we need to split, and now we need to use one of the other surfaces to split the one that hasn't been trimmed yet. So let's go ahead and select the split tool again. This time we're going to select this surface to split, and then the entity to split with. Choose that arm. We want to keep the tools, and this warning here says selected entity does not split selected parts. It intersects it because we've already used it to split it. It's actually like attached right at the surface. So don't pay any attention to that. It's still going to work. So go ahead and click the check mark. So you should have four surfaces now. Go ahead and orbit so you can see all four. So there's a surface on the inside, two surfaces that we need to basically get rid of. And to know which surface, you could go ahead and just toggle them off with the eyeball to see which surfaces you want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of 3 and 1, it looks like. So go ahead and enable all of the surfaces, and instead of hiding them, we're going to go ahead and delete them. So I'm going to use the delete part tool, and then I can simply select the ones I want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of part 1 or surface 1, and right now that changed the order of things, so you want to be careful again before you select something. So I'm going to try to select 2 and see what happens there. Yes, that is what I want to have happen. So click the check mark once you've selected the correct surfaces, and you should be left with this. The next step is to combine the two together to form one surface. So we're going to be using the Boolean tools. Click that. we're going to union these two together and then select the two. You do not need to select keep tools. That would be keeping the surfaces. So we're going to be creating a part which will be actually no, it will be a surface. So let's go ahead and click the check mark. So now we've combined them into one surface. All right, next what we're going to do is we want to basically fill in all this space with solid material. But it's not an enclosed shape. We just have some surfaces that are open, so it's not watertight. So we need to enclose it somehow, and we have a reference point to enclose this part here. That would be the right plane. So if I turn the right plane on, you can see that creates a barrier that can be used there. And then I can use another plane, the front plane, because this front plane extends all the way through space. This plane could close in all of this, all the way through. But there's a section here that is not still closed in. That's at the very top here where this half circle is. So I'm going to create a plane there that will cap this off. So I'm going to use the plane tool. I'm going to choose 3-point from the menu. And I'm going to click the end point of that circle, well, it's like a half circle, and then somewhere inside, anywhere along the line there, and then the other end point. Now I've created a plane that will basically cap off that part of my surface. So now I'm going to create a solid by using an enclose tool. If you do not see that, it's found where the thicken tool is. So I'm going to go ahead and end that. So go ahead and click on the arrow and choose enclose. Now I need to choose my entities. So I'm going to need the surface. So I'll go ahead and select that from the left. And I'm going to need 3 planes. The plane I created. Then I need to find the other 2, the front plane and the right plane. Once you have all of those selected, it should give you the option to select the check mark, and it will kind of imaginarily create some fill-in material there, indicating it's going to create a solid. Go ahead and click the check mark to accept that. And now as you orbit around, you can see it's completely filled in. Now it is a solid. All right, so we're going to mirror, this is just half, so I'm going to mirror this solid on the other side. So choose the mirror tool, choose your part, and then the mirror plane is going to be the front plane. That should create the other half. Make sure that you are adding that to part 1, and then click the check mark. All right, next we're going to create a hollow in this part and basically just keep the shell. So we're going to use a tool called shell. So find the tool in the tool menu there and click it. And we want to select the faces to remove. So I want there to be a hollow here. It's eventually going to be a hole. And then at the end of the arm here, I want that to also be hollow. So it creates empty space all the way through, but retains a shell thickness. So I want this to set the shell thickness to 2 millimeters and then press the check mark. I'm going to press the P key just to hide all my planes. Then if you want to, you can go ahead and hide the sketches so you can view your solid part. That concludes this exercise.